Season 1 Finale, The Betrayal. The sound of boots in the swamp echoed through the thick air, but it was the silence of the night that weighed most heavily on the Mapogo as they ventured deeper into the bayou, chasing shadows and ghosts. The cold, eerie swamp had become both their home and their graveyard, and now it was the backdrop for their most personal battle yet. Vulture was gone, and with him, the fragile trust that had held the brothers together. The blood had been spilled, but this betrayal ran deeper. It had cut to the very heart of the Mapogo. "Vulture's gone, and he's working with the Harbinger," Lion said, his voice hoarse from days of silence. His eyes were dark with both anger and sadness. "He's not just a traitor, he's a threat." The swamp seemed to hold its breath, and every step felt like an eternity. The brothers' faces were grim, their usual banter and camaraderie now replaced by a deadly focus. The map had been drawn. Their destiny now led them into the depths of their own darkness. Vulture's choice. Julien Vulture Boudreaux had always been the outsider. His brothers respected him, but there was always something about him that made them wary. His cold detachment, the way he seemed to be calculating every move, every word, it had always set him apart. He was the youngest of the Boudreaux brothers, a product of their father's violent temper and their mother's absence. From a young age, Vulture had learned to survive by keeping to the shadows, by watching and waiting. He learned the art of manipulation, how to make people believe what they wanted to believe, all while hiding his true intentions. But what most didn't know was that Vulture's cold exterior hid a broken man, one who had seen too much in the world outside the Mapogo, too much death, too many betrayals. The scars on his body were only half the story. The real wounds were inside. He had come to the Mapogo seeking redemption, but over time the organization's violent code had only deepened his cynicism. When the Harbinger's name was whispered into the underworld, Vulture saw an opportunity. The Mapogo had become a cage, a place where loyalty was expected without question, where the weight of the past kept them tied to the swamp. But the Harbinger promised freedom, power, a place where he could escape the cycle of violence and truly shape the future. Vulture had made his choice, and now he was the one who would bring the Mapogo to their knees. The brothers close in the Mapogo moved quickly. They followed every clue, every whispered name, until they found themselves standing at the edge of a dilapidated dock on the outskirts of the bayou, the stench of decay filling the air. This was where Vulture had gone, where he had betrayed them. "This is it," Kane said, his voice low and careful. "We find Vulture here, and we end this." Rhino cracked his knuckles, his eyes hard. "I'm not letting him get away. I'll kill him with my own hands if I have to." "No," Lion replied, his tone sharp. "We don't kill family, but we bring him back, one way or another." The swamp was still, the moonlight reflecting off the murky water as the brothers prepared to make their move. The confrontation, the dock stretched out into the swamp like a forgotten relic. The faint sound of murmured voices drifted on the wind, a signal that they were close. Lion led the way, his senses sharp as they crept forward. As they neared the end of the dock, a silhouette emerged from the shadows. It was Vulture, standing still as if he had been waiting for them. "I knew you'd come for me," Vulture said, his voice cold, almost disinterested. His eyes, however, betrayed something deeper, regret, perhaps, or the faintest flicker of doubt. Lion didn't speak immediately, his gaze steady on Vulture. "Why, Julien?" he finally asked. "Why betray us? We family? You didn't have to do this." Vulture's lips curled into a small, bitter smile. "Family?" he scoffed. "You really believe that? You've always been the leader, Lion, but you've never seen the whole picture. We're not the only players in this game, and I'm not a pawn anymore. I never was." "We trusted you," Rhino growled, stepping forward, "and you sold us out to some stranger hiding in the shadows?" Vulture shook his head. "You still don't get it. The Harbinger sees the future, and you're all too blinded by loyalty to see it. You want to survive, don't you? Then stop pretending you're better than the world we live in. We all get our hands dirty, but with the Harbinger, I'll be in control. No more running, no more hiding. I'll be free." The tension hung thick in the air as the brothers took a step forward, their hands on their weapons. They weren't here to kill Vulture. Not yet. But they had to make him understand. "You're wrong, Vulture," Kane said, his voice low. You think this is about survival? It's not. It's about the kind of men we want to be. We're not the monsters we've fought, no matter how many times we've had to cross the line. For a moment, Vulture looked as though he might respond, but the flicker of doubt in his eyes was quickly replaced by cold resolve. Then you'll die in the swamp, like everyone else. The betrayal unleashed. Without warning, the ground beneath their feet shifted, and the brothers were ambushed. A series of explosions ripped through the air, sending debris flying in all directions. The Harbinger's men emerged from the shadows, a well-coordinated army of mercenaries trained to take down anyone who stood in their way. Vulture stepped back, his expression unreadable as he watched the chaos unfold. He had played them all, betrayed them with the very trust they had placed in him. But now, he was no longer the Mapogo. He was the Harbinger's agent. The brothers fought with everything they had, but the odds were overwhelming. The mercenaries had them surrounded, and despite their years of training and brutal experience, they were outnumbered. Lion fought with his brothers at his side, but the weight of the betrayal felt like a vice tightening around his chest. They had one chance left, the final decision. In the midst of the battle, Lion spotted Vulture standing motionless, watching them fight as though detached from the violence he had unleashed. The anger that surged through Lion was tempered by an odd sadness. "Julian," Lion called, his voice shaking with both fury and pain. "This your last chance. Walk away from this, and I'll make sure you live. We don't have to end it like this." Vulture hesitated, his hand twitching toward his weapon. For a moment, it seemed like the old brother, the one who had fought beside them, might resurface. But then, Vulture made his choice. He turned his back on Lion, on his family, and disappeared into the shadows, leaving them to face the wrath of the Harbinger's forces. The aftermath. When the smoke cleared and the swamp fell silent once more, the Mapogo were battered and bloodied. They had fought off the Harbinger's mercenaries, but the victory felt hollow. Vulture was gone. The Mapogo had lost their brother. But Lion knew that the war wasn't over. They had survived the first battle, but the price had been steep. There was a bigger storm on the horizon, and no matter where Vulture went, no matter what side he chose, the Mapogo would be ready. They had been broken, but they were far from defeated.